What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. and Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the January 22nd, 2024 edition of Raw Talk. Matt Cam, Megan Morant in the studio, per usual, kind of a go-home show edition of sorts ahead of the Royal Rumble this coming weekend. Opening up the episode, replaying the opening segment with Rollins and Gunther, teasing a potential WrestleMania match between the two, which I would have bought into maybe 4, 5, 6 months ago before CM Punk came back to the company, but hopefully setting the stage for a future a future championship clash between the two. Maybe Basher Berlin for the World Heavyweight Championship or whatever it might be. But they replayed the opening segment. They also recapped the opening match with the non-finish, another non-finish to a New Day match, New Day versus Imperium, and kind of furthering that feud. We hear from Gunther backstage afterward with Jackie Redmond. And Gunther says that Kingston's accomplished a lot over the course of his WWE career, but not only that, I think Raw also marked, I want to say, the 16-year anniversary of his debut in the company, arriving on ECW 16 years ago from the day that Raw happened and this interview happened last night, which is pretty cool. I don't know if they mentioned that on Raw commentary. I probably missed it if they did. But he talks about Kingston and how he's a decorated competitor. It's going to mean that much more when he beats him next week, only after winning the Men's Rumble on Saturday and going on to win the World Heavyweight Championship from Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. That is certainly not happening. He's certainly not winning the Rumble either at this point, but he very likely and should will beat Kofi Kingston next Monday on Raw to retain that Intercontinental Championship. Back in the studio, Matt Cam praises Gunther's Rumble performance last year, entering at number 1 or 2, whatever. I think it was 1. Walking in at 1, lasting the entire time before being thrown out by Cody Rhodes. And that he might be able to repeat it this year, this time walking out as the winner, which, again, like I said, he will not, but he could come close. We'll see. They made no mention of Brock Lesnar, and why would he? He hasn't been on the show in months, but I think it's a pretty likely scenario we could see those two interact in the match. Maybe Gunther gets thrown out by Brock, or vice versa. We'll see. So they hype up the Intercontinental Championship match for next Monday on Raw. Matt Camp also mentioned that Kofi has not held that title. He's been a champion in the past 12 years, but he has not held that specific championship in 12 years, which it's crazy to think it's been that long, but he's not wrong. He did lose, I believe, his last Intercontinental Championship to Wade Barrett on the New Year's Eve edition of Raw in 2012. So it has been close to 12 years, but still, it's been 12 calendar years, which is pretty crazy. We hear from Jey Uso coming out of the commercial break, addressing Bronson Reed. Really nothing out of the ordinary here. Ahead of their match next week on Raw, first time ever one-on-one. In the studio, they hype up the match, and Matt Camp discusses why Bronson Reed wants to win this match heading into Elimination Chamber. He had a pretty impressive performance, he notes, in last year's Chamber match for the United States Championship. Wanted to repeat that momentum this year, not just because it's Elimination Chamber on the road to WrestleMania, but because they're going to be in Australia, his native country. So it's going to mean that much more for him to beat Jey Uso next week if he can indeed do so. They also recap the Miz versus Dominic Mysterio match, won by Dominic, and the main event with Drew McIntyre beating Damian Priest heading into the Rumble this weekend. Not an overly significant storyline, significant main event. They did further the R-Truth and Damian Priest stuff, the tension there with Judgment Day, blah, blah, blah. It's been a highlight of Raw for weeks now, so really no surprise there. Matt Camp discusses why both McIntyre and Priest would want to win the Rumble on Saturday. Now, Priest is in the Rumble. Now, remembering it now, he was shown in the graphic, which is comical because he's a fucking Money in the Bank holder. Why would he even want to win the Rumble match among 30 people? I mean, I guess it's worth a shot, but it's kind of a waste of a spot, essentially, when you think about it. He already owns a title shot that he can cash in at any time for any championship, apparently. But he will be in the match, and like I said, Matt Camp mentioned how McIntyre won the Rumble 4 years ago, won the championship in front of nobody. He can avenge that here at Mania this year by winning the Rumble, winning the championship at Mania in front of a capacity crowd. And then with Priest, he debuted in the Rumble, which is true. Completely forgot about that. Debuting in the Rumble as an NXT star at that point, arriving on Raw the next night, and going on to have a pretty impressive performance at WrestleMania with Bad Bunny. And I think being in the Final Four of the Rumble, he mentioned, I think the following year, which I try to forget because that Rumble sucked, but I'm pretty sure he was among the Final Four in that year's Rumble as well. So he talks about that. They recap the Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell loss to Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. So it looks like Shayna and Zoe are getting the next tag team title opportunity, which is interesting because they didn't officially announce that. But two things that were weird about that outcome on Monday. One, we're coming up on Elimination Chamber, as I mentioned. You would think they might give Indy and Candice, and maybe they still will, the tag team title opportunity on that pay-per-view in Australia, again, where Indy Hartwell is from. Two, we're getting already, I'm not really sure why they're rushing into it, The Kabuki Warriors against Katana Chance and Kaden Carter on Friday SmackDown for the tag team titles. Again, not sure why they're doing it so soon. They could have held off on it. Katana Chance and Kaden Carter just beat Isla Dawn and Alba Fire last week on SmackDown. So my point is that the Kabuki Warriors win on Friday, which I think there's a pretty likely chance they do, cutting short the babyfaces run it only like a month, which is kind of weird. But if you put the belts on them, then you're left with a heel versus heel matchup, which wouldn't be the first time in that division, but I can't imagine many people would care. But we do hear from Zoe Stark after that backstage. Shayna as well. Zoe just kind of goes off about their win and putting the other teams in the division on notice. Pretty generic stuff. Shayna saying the same shit she always does. And I like Shayna, but she's, talking about how she'll tear the champions, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, limb by limb. It's the same old, paint by number stuff from these two. So it was fine. But they then replayed the CM Punk Cody Rhodes exchange from Raw, which was probably the best part of the show, heading into the Royal Rumble on Saturday. And then to close out the show, they run down the Royal Rumble card and their potential picks to win the men's Rumble match specifically. They didn't really focus a whole lot on the women's Rumble, interestingly. Obviously, the men's Rumble is the big attraction this year, as is the Universal Championship match, the four-way, but I think it's pretty safe to say Roman's winning that. But the Rumble card, they did not announce any new match for the show. It's worth noting, for the show on Saturday, it's a 4-match card. And that's not the first time that's happened. I feel like they had a 4-match Rumble card in 2011 too. They had a pretty small card for that show. It was just Miz and Orton for the WWE title, Ziggler and Edge for the World Heavyweight title. The men's, that was a shorter card because they had the 40-person Rumble, which wasn't great, but I enjoyed it at the time. And then I think they had a Divas title match, an impromptu Divas title match, and that was it. So, now we have 2 Rumbles, which is longer than just one 40-man Rumble. And last year they had, I think, 4 or 5 matches on the card. I think 5. A world title match, a women's match, Bray and Knight, and then the 2 Rumbles themselves. And the show ended up going like fucking 4.5 hours. So it's probably for the best. The show's on the shorter side as far as the amount of matches they booked and announced. So it should be a pretty good show on paper. I don't think they're doing a Talking Smack on Saturday. I think they are, actually. They didn't mention that here, whether they are or aren't. I do know they're doing the bump, obviously, on Wednesday, as they normally do. They promoted the entire New Day. They're going to be in the bump on Wednesday, as well as some guy named something Pharaoh. No fucking clue who that is, but that's coming up in the bump on Wednesday. And then on Talking Smack, they'll probably have last-minute analysis of SmackDown on Friday, heading into the Rumble that night, which I probably won't have a chance to watch ahead of time, but will watch at some point after the fact and review it for all the stuff that's not Rumble-related from SmackDown on Friday. So thanks for checking out the video. Much appreciated. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Have an awesome rest of your week, and I'll catch your ass down the road.